in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. It is a Monday morning. What time are we looking at? 6:38 a.m. It's 55 degrees out. It feels like football weather in the great state of Ohio. It feels good. It felt good to watch that preseason game on Saturday night. Joe Burrow just goes out there, does whatever he feels like with the football, and the Bengals, that first team offense, man, just clicking. Just clicking. It's the preseason. I don't want to overreact too much, right? You want to kind of stay steady. You don't want to get too nutty. But to see 9 back out there with that first team offense, no Jamar, by the way, just go right up and down the field. What did he do? He went 5 of 7 for 51 yards and a touchdown. The only 2 incompletions, a screen that gets blown up, he chucks it into the ground, and the long ball to T. Higgins. He gets to uncork one, which I'm sure he was looking forward to doing against another opponent. T should have had that one. It's the preseason. We'll forgive it. It was a great throw. It was a good defensive play, too, in double coverage. But that's a ball that we've come to expect T. Higgins to come down with. I say that not as a knock on T, but as a compliment to T. He doesn't miss many footballs, and that was one of them that I can promise you when he went back and watched. He said, I'm going to get that one next time. Couldn't have went any better. Could not have went any better. Joe Burrow didn't get touched, and yeah, you just watch what you saw and it got you excited. It's kind of like if you were ever stupid enough, and maybe you're still in this stage, in your 20s or in college or whatever, to be in a long-distance relationship, and you'd had to go weeks or maybe even months without seeing someone, and then you see that significant other for the first time in a long time, you're like, oh, I forgot how much I enjoyed you. I forgot how much I like being around you. It feels good to hold you and feel you and kiss you. It's what it felt like for me watching that first team offense on Monday night, or Saturday night, excuse me. Weird thing to say? Sure, little bit. But honesty is what I'm all about here. So it was nice to see them go back out there and do what we know they're capable of doing. T. Higgins, I mean, that's the guy right there, right? Forget the double coverage throw. That shows you the trust Burrow has in him. I mean, the quick throw to the outside, he makes a guy miss, he gets into the end zone. That's the guy who, if he can do that for 17 games, is going to be one of the top paid receivers in the NFL. And look, man, we've seen it before. We saw it again when Jamar Chase is not on the field. T. Higgins takes over. We saw it at the end of his rookie year, right? I think it's easy to forget, because Jamar came on so strong, that at the end of his rookie year in 2020, he was a second-round pick the year Burrow was the first-round pick. He, down the stretch, absolutely dominated, and that was Burrow was hurt. That was with Brandon Allen at quarterback, and Ryan Finley, I believe, at quarterback at times too. So Ryan Finley, didn't plan on bringing him up today, but here we are. T. Higgins, that's the guy we know he can be. Fun to see. One series in one preseason game. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but it's hard not to. Like I said, it's been, 8 months since we've seen this team play football? Been even longer than that since we've seen this team play football with Joe Burrow. So incredibly exciting to go back out there and see it again. Chase Brown is a guy, we've been excited about him, and we don't really know yet how those first-team reps are going to be split, because Zach Taylor said he got sick the night before the game. Chase Brown hits that hole at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and then he's got another gear after that. And that's something we haven't seen in Cincinnati, I feel like, for quite a while. Joe Mixon kind of got into a place there for a couple years where he was trying to run, it felt like, more with his eyes rather than just put his head down. And that's a strategy that worked at times for him. But we have not seen a guy take the ball and go 1,000,000 miles per hour in a long time, and I think we're going to see that from Chase Brown. And it's a situation where a lot of times, before the defense even realizes whether it's a run or pass, he's at the second level. We saw some flashes of that with him last year. It'll be exciting to see it again this year. Again, one game, but he was hitting the hole like an absolute maniac. So exciting about that. And then, the cherry on top, the thing that I am most happy to see on Saturday night is Amarius Mims comes in there, the first-round pick at right tackle, and it's one preseason game. I think he played 2 drives, so it's a dozen or so plays, but he looked the part. And that's a guy we heard could be a project, could have some polishing. If he can step up and fill that role, Trent Brown hasn't even stepped on the practice field barely, and Amarius Mims might have already stole the job. Am I overreacting? Maybe, but what else did you want to see out of him? And when you can get a young guy in there like that, no matter where the Bengals land on this thing, no matter who starts at right tackle opposite of Orlando Brown Jr., you're going to have a good option if things don't go well out of the gate. Trent Brown has the injury history, which I think is a big reason they needed another guy in there. They didn't sign a guy they felt comfortable. I mean, if you had to bet right now, would Trent Brown play all 17 games this year? I don't know how many people would make that bet. So it's a good situation to be in. The Bengals have had O-line depth issues forever. It's not the sexiest thing to talk about. We're going to talk about it more later. So that's a good tease, huh? Tell you something that's not fun to talk about and then say we're going to talk about it more later. But I want to address that as well. Again, just fun to see, man. Fun to see. We forgot how good it is to see those guys go out there and rip it up and down the field. Joe Burrow doing whatever he wanted to with the football. And that's without Jamar Chase, no Zach Moss. So they've got more pieces to add here. Obviously, the big one in Jamar. But good to see. Wide receiver 3, I want to touch on this because we talked about it last week. I think the consensus right now is kind of that it's going to be Andre Yoshevich. We saw Yoshi in that role the other night where Dan Pitcher, the new offensive coordinator, is going to him, right? We saw plays where he was the first option. Now, again, Jamar's not on the field, and I don't know how much of the role he's filling there, but hey, man, we talked about Tyler Boyd, 775 yards a game, right? In Joe Burrow's first 4 years in the NFL, not a game, that would be insane. Tyler Boyd in Joe Burrow's first 4 years in the NFL averaged 775 yards a season. That's including 667 last year when we all kind of felt like the production dropped off a little. And it did. That was below his average. So that's got to come from somewhere. Can Yoshi be a guy who goes out there and gets you 450, 550, maybe 600 yards this year? Bengals certainly seem to believe that based on what we've seen at training camp and what we saw in that first preseason game. So you take that, you take Mike Gesicki, you take some of the Trenton Irwin still in the mix. I still feel confident he's going to get you 200 or 300 yards. You take these guys and you kind of start to see who's going to be the guys who you can count on after Jamar and T. And again, man, I mean, Yoshi's a 6th-round pick from last year out of Princeton. Do we talk enough? I mean, maybe we do in Cincinnati and Bengeldom. Do we talk enough about how well this team develops wide receivers? Just kind of absurd. And we're seeing it again with him. Charlie Jones banged up, didn't play, but a lot to look forward to. It's just I'm getting maybe too excited, but I don't know that I am either. We've seen what this offense is with Joe Burrow when things are clicking. Nice to get him out there. The preseason for him, it seems like he's always been banged up, getting appendicitis, hurting the ankle last year. It's always something. And to get him out there so he can hit the ground running in week 1 is big. And I think we're going to see that with him. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think maybe, at least I and a lot of us like to overreact to what we see in the preseason. And after years and years, I try not to do it so much anymore. But to see that first team offense come out there against another NFL team and just do whatever they wanted. It was like Joe Burrow had a joystick in his hand and was saying, here's what's going to happen on each and every play. And for the most part, he had his way. So good to see. A lot of fun. Dan Pitcher, the new offensive coordinator, the formations, the designs, he was having fun. He was getting creative. Look, he's had to sit there. Everyone's known that once Brian Callahan got a head coaching job, which Brian Callahan goes to Tennessee, everyone knew Dan Pitcher, the quarterback's coach in Cincinnati, was going to be the next guy up. He's been waiting on this moment. He looked like he's having fun kind of designing plays, putting things together, and obviously in that one series we saw from the first teamers, it looks like he's doing all right. Second team, third team offense, not so good, but that's what the preseason's for. Iron out those wrinkles. Again, man, it's football. These guys are learning. There's a lot of young guys in there, a lot of guys clicking. We all feel comfortable with Jake Browning behind Joe Burrow. We hope that we just see Jake Browning standing there with a clipboard all year, but he's a guy you feel comfortable with back there. Otherwise, there's just a lot of things that need to start going right for those guys. But like I just mentioned, we probably look into the preseason a little too much. If we have to see too many of those guys that we saw after the first series, things are screwed anyway. So it is what it is. Depth is not easy to come across in the NFL, and if you do have it, you don't have it for long because people come and scoop those other guys up. So that's where we're at right now with that offensive side of the ball. Felt good, looked good. We'll see how much Joe Burrow plays in the preseason from here out, if he plays at all. I would imagine that he, and we might know this answer by the end of the day, I would imagine he probably gets at least another series this weekend against Chicago. And after that, he would get almost 3 weeks rest, right? So let's see here. The 10th, that would be the 18th. He could get 20 days off, 21 days off if he only plays another series against Chicago. So we'll see what happens. No one gets hurt. No notable injuries anywhere. Some NFL teams did not have that fortune this weekend. So, yeah, not much you can ask for other than what we saw. Of course, there's little things you can nitpick. The defensive side of the ball, especially, you saw some depth pieces who you get a lot more of those on defense. Let's get into that. Let's talk about the defense. The defensive linemen did not play, right? We didn't see Sam Hubbard. We didn't see Trey Hendrickson. We didn't see B.J. Hill. We did not see the new addition in Sheldon Rankins, who will replace DJ Reader. What we did see, what I was excited to see, was a good bit of Myles Murphy. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm in my basement still working on putting together a proper studio, and I'm looking down because I'm watching my child on the baby monitor because it's 6:49 a.m. when I'm recording this. Back to Myles Murphy. Myles Murphy played a lot. First round pick a year ago. We all saw down the stretch what he looked like he could become, and I don't think he could ask for much more, right? Like when he was out there, for the most part, more often than not, he looked like the best player on the field. Now he should. He's a former first round pick who is out there against mostly backups, but he was living in the backfield, and I cannot emphasize enough how important it's going to be in a conference where you're going up. The two AFC championship teams, we know them well, right? Baltimore and Kansas City. Lamar's going to run around. He's going to fool you at times. Mahomes is going to run around. He's going to fool you at times. Not as much as Lamar does with his legs, but we all know what Patrick Mahomes is capable of. Should I not say his name? Should I go Jamar? Should I just call him 15? We'll just call him 15. We know what 15 is capable of on the other side of the ball. So to have if you can get Myles Murphy to play to that potential, it's kind of like you have another starter coming in to rotate, and that would just be huge. I mean, you just need that in this NFL. I didn't even mention Josh Allen, who the Bengals could see should things go well. So it was good to see him kind of do that. It would have been, I don't want to say easy, but it wouldn't have been the most shocking thing in the world. Guys regress sometimes, and he has not. He looks like what we thought he could look like, what he should look like. So that's a credit to the coaching staff. Good to see that happen. Dax Hill, who was the first-round pick in 2022, so kind of getting some run here with these defensive guys who are first-round picks, and Dax Hill is on a different page than Myles Murphy. We felt good about Myles Murphy. Dax Hill didn't live up to the hype last year at safety. He's at corner now. He's so athletic. I mean, that pass breakup he had, I think it was in the first quarter. I mean, he got air. He was bent backwards. He looked like he was doing the high jump over in Paris. It was insane. So they've got to, not that they have to, they've got pieces back there, but if they can find a way to get him involved, when he's on the field, I think years ago I made the comparison to him. I thought he could be Ed Reed. That didn't work out. But he has that athletic ability, right? He might be the most athletic guy on the defensive side of the ball. They've just got to figure out, how can we put him in position to help the football team? And they've got him at corner. Good for them. It would have been easy to say, hey, he's not working out at safety. Let's just plant him on the depth chart and see what happens when his contract comes up. They know how athletic he is, what a freak he is, what he can do, and they're just trying to find a way to get him involved. And he looked all right. Could have looked better, but for a guy who is adjusting to playing cornerback in the NFL, I think it was a good night for him. So played a ton of snaps. I think he might have led the defense in snaps. And yeah, there was just, tough to say. Again, it's a preseason. We overreact for things. And the things we kind of can react to probably don't matter much because they're depth guys who aren't going to see a ton of playing time anyways. But it's interesting to see those two guys in particular. I thought Myles Murphy, Dax Hill, let's see how they're doing. And Myles looked great. Dax, I think it was acceptable. I think it was understandable to see him where he's at. And he seemed to embrace it. He seemed to be having fun out there. So that's step one. It was weird to see Jordan Battle out there that much, right? we saw how excellent he was as a rookie. For a third-round rookie playing safety in the NFL last year, you could not have asked for more out of him last year. He played a ton last night, or on Saturday night, excuse me. And we're going to see Geno Stone and Von Bell as the starters. So you're not going to see as much of him, but he's a great, again, kind of like Dax, a guy who maybe, are you going to see a ton of him in the regular season? I'm not sure. But he's a guy you're comfortable having there. So we saw how good he could be. That'll be something to watch. Josh Newton, the fifth-round corner out of TCU, he got banged up, comes back, makes a pick. He's an athlete. Again, preseason. Don't want to go too insane. But when you see a third-day draft pick come out and kind of make some plays like that, it's always a good sign. So as far as the defense goes, we don't get a ton from them, but you still got a lot of guys. You still got Pratt and Wilson in the middle. DJ Turner, I think, is the guy. I was thinking about this earlier. Like DJ Turner, I've got Cam Taylor-Britt. Everyone knows he's CB1. I'm ready to watch him have that breakout year where he becomes kind of a consensus top 10 cornerback. If DJ Turner on the other side can develop into what the Bengals think he can be as a second-round pick and kind of just step his game up. Like, I feel like every year, if you look at the two teams who are in the Super Bowl, or even the four teams that make the conference championships, they all have 2, 3, or 4 guys who no one knew much about at the beginning of the year, but really stepped up and kind of made a name for themselves. I think DJ Turner needs to be that guy this year. I think if he can be, and he's CB2, right? And we know there's a lot of receiving talent, not only in the AFC North, but in the AFC. So if he can step up and be the guy across from Cam Taylor-Britt, you can't expect him to go out there and be Darrelle Revis. But if he can progress and take that next step, because he was hit or miss last year at times, if he can progress and take that next step, I think that's the piece on defense. If you want to see someone elevate their game, I think that's the guy you need to see elevate his game. And I think that's the guy who could make all the difference in the world when it comes to a very good defense, which I think we all feel confident about with the roster, with Lou Anarumo. If he can be like a lockdown corner on occasion and a very good corner otherwise, I think he's the guy who can take the Bengals defense from very good to great, from top 10 to top 5. So that's a guy, I didn't even have him written down here, but didn't plan on talking about him. But just as the wheels move here, that's the guy I feel like if he can take that next step, that could be all the difference in the world for this defense. So yeah, we talked offense, we talked defense. Again, you can't tell a ton out of the preseason, but that's what we're talking about. We're excited. I mentioned earlier it was fun to see just 9 back out there throwing the football. We don't see him in the preseason too often, so good to see. The other thing I got to talk about, I'm not going to take us out of here on too much of a downer, but it needs to be discussed because everyone is talking about it. It's the perennial preseason headache that has become Jackson Carman, who is currently second on the depth chart at left tackle. Look, he's a guy who, what do you have? 2 flags for holding and a false start. That's kind of what we've come to expect, right? Like everyone knows what we're going to see seemingly. It's kind of like, all right, he's entering year 4. Maybe it's been cleaned up. How has it not been cleaned up at this point? How has he not taken things seriously enough and it's even more exaggerated for Bengals fans because they traded up for him. They knew what a phenom he was coming out of high school. I mean, he started for 3 years at Clemson. I think he played in 2 national championship games protecting Trevor Lawrence. Like, we know how good he could have been. And I don't know how well that translates to the NFL. What I do know is that when you trade up to draft a guy in the second round, you take him ahead of a guy like Creed Humphreys, who goes to the rival Chiefs and is on a Hall of Fame trajectory at center. It becomes a very frustrating situation to watch year after year. And everyone's worked. Like, take the football thing away. Everyone's worked in their day job with someone like Jackson Carman, right? Like, doesn't necessarily contribute as much as they should. Not uncommon for them to kind of bring things down a little bit. Yet year after year, they're still employed because they don't ask for a raise, right? And if you're Jackson Carman, you really can't. Like, if he went in and asked for a raise, they would laugh him out the door. He's cheap. He's on a second round rookie contract, so you got him there. And look, people just aren't that easy to replace, and that especially includes NFL offensive linemen. I went and looked this up last night. Bobby Hart played 98. He appeared in 98 NFL games, including 2 full seasons as a starter in Cincinnati. Like, offensive line depth in the league, offensive linemen in general are hard to come across. Now, Jackson Carman's probably going to be a healthy and active in a few games this year. We've seen that before. We hope that someone else comes along and bumps him from that spot. We hope that happens. But right now, like, I don't know what else you do. He's played tackle. He's played guard. It's kind of a headache that you have to deal with in the preseason. And again, if this is the biggest headache we have in the preseason, we're going to be all right. The Bengals are going to be all right. If that's the biggest issue, is the backup left tackle is ticking you off with the penalties and seemingly lack of just kind of caring about the game of football out there in year 4, when he's got to know things aren't going well for me in the NFL. Top 50 pick who just year after year can't make his way onto the football field, not to mention the Bengals. I mean, it's no secret anymore with the guys they've signed. He's not really in the future plans. He's there as a depth piece, and when his rookie deal's up, we'll see what happens. But look, we can't get too upset about it, right? He's probably going to be a healthy and active more often than not. We hope a guy comes along, bumps him on that depth chart. But if he doesn't, you've got Orlando Brown Jr. there. It's kind of one of those things as we were all frustrated, and I've seen a few articles about it even. We got to remember, it's the preseason. It's a guy who you're probably, hopefully, going to forget about once the regular season starts. So, yeah, chill with it, man. It's frustrating. It is frustrating to watch because of the potential and the guys who were drafted after him. But that's football. That's part of it. It was a second-round pick, and it just didn't work out. And it's frustrating to see the lack of care when it seems like so many guys in that locker room are busting it every day to do the opposite, to get the screws tightened, to get things working the way they should. So that's where we're at on that. Let's do one for the road and call this one an episode as we'll get the day started here, 7 a.m. on the East Coast. I say that as if this is live. One for the road, we have in our neighborhood, we have food trucks that come to our park every Thursday night. There was one that came over from Pennsylvania on Thursday, and they had some good food, and it was fun. But I had a black and orange hat on, and similar to the one you see me wearing now if you're watching this on YouTube. And as I walk up, one of the guys working at the food truck, probably like 50 years old, he says to me, "Hey, is Joe Burrow going to retire?" This is last week, by the way. This is in August, as Joe Burrow's in training camp, as Joe Shiesty, Slim Shiesty, has come out with the blonde mop top. Everyone knows that he is back in business, and no one ever thought he was going to retire. But he says, "Hey, is Joe Burrow going to retire?" And I just kind of laughed, and I said, "No, I think he's going to stick it out here." And he was, "No, I'm serious," he said, "I'm serious. I read an article saying he might retire because of the injuries." And I literally just kind of laughed, ordered my food. Then as I was waiting on my food, I said to the guy, I was like, "Did you actually see an article that said that? Are you serious about this?" He's like, "Yeah." And then he kind of let his guard down a little bit. And I could see he wasn't, I thought maybe, he's from between like Pittsburgh and Buffalo. So I thought maybe he was trolling a bit. He had seen the article where Joe Burrow talks about his football mortality. Someone had taken that headline and said that Joe Burrow ponders the future of the game, which if you read the quotes from Burrow, and again, this is like months ago, but he's not doing that. He's talking about you have to think about when you've had this many injuries that, this thing doesn't last forever. You get the downtime, you get the time off, and you realize there are times you can't play football. And at one point in time, eventually everyone comes to the point where they can no longer play. But it's easy to take those quotes and make a headline saying that Joe Burrow is kind of contemplating retirement, right? It's not an accurate headline. It's not a good headline. No one with any real editorial experience, or hopefully not a journalism degree, would write that headline, but that's the world we live in. And I say that